The briefing room smelled like fear and overcooked cafeteria protein paste. Instructor Vralketh stood at the front, all four arms crossed in a way that somehow looked more intimidating than threatening. His chitinous exoskeleton gleamed under the harsh lights, and his mandibles clicked with what the translation software rendered as profound disappointment. "Cadets," he began, his voice like gravel being dragged across sheet metal. "Before you lies the Nightmare Protocol. In 300 years of Galactic Military Academy history, the average survival time is 17 hours. The record is 47 hours and 32 minutes, held by a Kragnoth warrior who lost 2 of his 6 hearts in the process. He still wakes up screaming." Around the room, various species of alien cadets shifted nervously. A gelatinous Blorbian actually quivered so hard it splashed a bit. The Zentari twins, whose species literally breathed fire when stressed, were setting off the sprinkler system. In the back row, Marcus Webb raised his hand. He was the only human in a class of 47 cadets, and he'd shown up to this briefing wearing what could only be described as aggressive casual wear, complete with a hoodie that said, "Earth, you'll never leave." Vralketh's compound eyes swiveled to fixate on him. "Cadet Webb." "What?" "Yeah, hi, quick question. Can I bring snacks?" The room fell silent. Even the sprinklers seemed to pause mid-spray. "Snacks," Vralketh repeated, his translator clearly struggling with the concept in this context. "Yeah, you know, trail mix, maybe some jerky. Granola bars. The simulation runs for what, a few days if you're good? I get cranky when I'm hungry." A Vexorian cadet, whose species was known for their military prowess, leaned over. "Cadet Webb, perhaps you misunderstand. The Nightmare Protocol has a 97% failure rate. Most cadets trigger their emergency extraction within the first 6 hours. This is not, as you humans say, a picnic." Marcus shrugged. "I mean, not with that attitude it isn't." Vralketh's mandibles clicked rapidly, which the more experienced cadets recognized as the insectoid equivalent of a migraine. "Cadet Webb, you will not need snacks because you will not last long enough to get hungry. The simulation contains Class 5 predators, extreme environmental hazards, resource scarcity, and scenarios specifically designed to break even the most hardened warriors. It is called the Nightmare Protocol for a reason." "So that's a no on the snacks?" "That is a no on your chances of survival." Marcus pulled out a small notebook and actually started writing. "Class 5 predators, environmental hazards, got it. This is sounding more and more like that camping trip to Yellowstone where my buddy Dave got chased by a moose. Fun times." Vralketh made a sound that the translator gave up on, rendering it simply as exasperation. "The simulation begins in 1 hour. You will each be dropped into a randomized location on the scenario planet. There are no teams. There is no assistance. There is only survival or failure. Dismissed." As the cadets filed out, Marcus turned to the cadet next to him, a rabbit-like alien named Pip whose ears were flat against his head in terror. "Hey, you okay, buddy? You look like you're about to pass out." Pip's nose twitched frantically. Okay? We are about to enter the single most dangerous training simulation in the known galaxy, and you are asking about snacks. My species has a saying, when death grins, the wise run. Death is not just grinning, Cadet Webb, it is laughing, maniacally. Marcus patted him on the shoulder. "Tell you what, stick near me if you can. I've got a good feeling about this. Your feelings are statistically irrelevant in the face of certain doom. Yeah, but they're my feelings and that's what counts." As they walked toward the simulation chambers, Marcus was already mentally packing. No physical snacks allowed, sure, but he'd paid attention during the environmental survival lectures. There was always something edible if you knew where to look. And that stuff about Class 5 predators? Please. He'd grown up in Australia and then moved to Montana. He knew from dangerous wildlife. Vralketh watched the human go, shaking his head with all 4 arms. In 3 centuries, he'd never seen a cadet look excited about the Nightmare Protocol. This was either going to be the fastest failure in Academy history or something very, very weird. The simulation materialized around Marcus in a flash of disorienting light and stomach-churning spatial displacement. When his vision cleared, He found himself standing in what could only be described as aggressively hostile jungle. The trees were the wrong color, somewhere between purple and angry. The humidity was set to rainforest sauna. Strange howls echoed from multiple directions, each one apparently trying to out-terrify the others. The sky was a sickly green, and something was definitely watching him from the undergrowth. Marcus took a deep breath, looked around, and nodded approvingly. Nice. Solid 7 out of 10 for ambiance. Little heavy on the doom and gloom, but I can work with this. From his vantage point on a rocky outcropping, he could see several other cadets spawning into the simulation. The Vexorian warrior immediately drew his weapons and sprinted for the tree line. The Blorbian took one look around and slapped its emergency extraction beacon. Smart. The Zentari twins flew straight up, presumably looking for high ground. Marcus sat down and started taking inventory of his standard-issue survival pack. Emergency rations for 12 hours, water purification tablets, a basic multi-tool, a thermal blanket, and, because the Academy had a sense of humor, a manual titled, "So You're About to Die, A Cadet's Guide to Dignified Failure." "Okay," he muttered, pulling out the multi-tool. First things first. Shelter, water, food, fire, same as always. A roar split the air, close enough that Marcus felt it in his chest. Something large crashed through the undergrowth about 50 meters away. He glanced over, saw something with too many teeth and not enough eyes, and went back to examining the clearing in front of him. Yeah, I see you. Hold your horses." The creature roared again, apparently offended by being ignored. Marcus stood up, picked up a rock, and chucked it in the creature's general direction. "Shoo! Not interested, I'm busy." To his surprise and the creature's apparent confusion, it actually backed off. Probably not used to prey that didn't run. "Thought so? All bark, no bite? Well, probably plenty of bite, but you get my point." He found a nice clearing with good drainage, decent visibility, and a convenient overhang that would work for the foundation of a shelter. The ground was relatively flat, and there was a stream nearby. The water looked questionable, but that's what purification tablets were for. Marcus was halfway through constructing a basic lean-to when reality shimmered and Pip materialized about 10 meters away. The rabbit alien took one look at the hostile jungle, one look at the shelter Marcus was building, and one look at his own trembling paws. "I am going to die," Pip announced. "This is where Pip ends. Future generations will speak of my extremely brief and unremarkable existence. Or," Marcus called out, "you could come over here and help me with this shelter. I've got clean water, and I'm pretty sure I saw some edible mushrooms over by that weird blue tree." Pip's ears perked up. "You have survived for more than 30 seconds. This is already above my projected timeline. How?" "Well, I didn't panic and run into the murder forest for starters. Come on, grab that branch over there, the thick one." For the next several hours, Marcus worked with the efficiency of someone who'd actually paid attention during the survival training courses. Pip mostly handed him things and provided running commentary on their impending doom, but even that was helpful in its own way. By the time the simulation's first night fell, they had a functioning shelter afire, a water collection system using the thermal blanket and some hollow reeds, and Marcus was roasting something that looked like a cross between a squirrel and a pineapple. "Is that safe to eat?" Pip asked, eyeing the skewered creature suspiciously. "Probably. Didn't foam at the mouth when I caught it, passed the skin test, cooked all the way through. We'll find out in a few hours if I'm wrong." This is not reassuring. "Welcome to wilderness survival, buddy. Half of it is just educated guessing and hoping your intestines cooperate." A predator emerged from the jungle, drawn by the firelight. This one was definitely more threatening than the first one, all sleek scales and predatory grace. It circled their camp, eyes reflecting the firelight. Marcus stood up, grabbed his water bottle, and sprayed it directly at the creature. "No, bad. We talked about boundaries." The predator, shocked by the audacity, retreated with an offended hiss. Pip stared. You sprayed a Class 5 predator with water. Works on cats back home. Figured it was worth a shot." Marcus sat back down and took a bite of his questionable dinner. "Hey, not bad. Tastes like chicken. Everything tastes like chicken." In the monitoring room, Vralketh watched the feeds from multiple cadets. The Vexorian was hunkered in a cave, weapons drawn, slowly losing his mind to the darkness. 3 cadets had already extracted, 5 more were on the verge. And then there was Marcus Webb, teaching a terrified rabbit alien how to weave a watertight basket, while some kind of meat roasted over a campfire. "This is wrong," Vralketh muttered. "This is all wrong. He should be running. He should be hiding. He should be afraid." His assistant, a cyborg named Unit 7, tilted its head. "Respectfully, sir, the human appears to be thriving. He is not supposed to thrive. He is supposed to barely survive. That is the point." On screen, Marcus lay back in his shelter, hands behind his head, and appeared to be pointing out constellations to Pip. Vralketh reached for the difficulty settings. We shall see how he handles Day 2. Day 3 of the Nightmare Protocol dawned with what the simulation cheerfully designated as moderate hostility levels. Marcus woke up, stretched, and noticed that his campsite had somehow acquired a hammock. He'd fashioned it the previous afternoon from vine-like plants that were probably mildly poisonous, but made excellent rope when properly treated. The rain collection system now fed into several container gourds he'd found and hollowed out. And unless he was very much mistaken, those seeds he'd planted near the shelter's perimeter were already sprouting. "Good morning," Marcus called to Pip, who was curled up in the corner of the shelter, ears twitching in his sleep. "We've got work to do." Pip opened one eye. "We are still alive. This continues to defy my understanding of probability." "Yep, now get up. I want to build a proper fire pit today, and I think I spotted some fruit trees about half a kilometer south." "You want to explore, voluntarily, into the murder jungle?" "It's not a murder jungle if you know what you're doing. It's just a jungle with aggressive tendencies." By midday, Marcus had upgraded the camp significantly. The fire pit was ringed with stones, had a proper ventilation system, and featured a makeshift grill made from salvaged simulation materials. The shelter now had a rainproof roof, multiple rooms, and what Pip generously called rustic charm. They'd also discovered that the fruit from the trees was not only edible but actually pretty good. Marcus had started a small stockpile. That's when the simulation decided to push back. The sky darkened unnaturally. Thunder rolled without clouds. And then the acid rain started. Inside, Pip shrieked, diving for the shelter. Marcus looked up at the falling droplets, watched them sizzle on the rocks, and calmly walked to the shelter while putting up the hood on his jacket. "Yeah, this was in the manual. Give it 20 minutes. Your shelter will not withstand acid rain. We will be dissolved." This is how Pip ends, liquefied in a hostile simulation. But the shelter held. Marcus had built the roof with overlapping layers and a steep pitch. The acid rolled right off, channeling away from their camp into designated drainage areas. Marcus pulled out his notebook and made a mark. "Okay, so acid rain is on a 3-day cycle. Good to know." "How are you taking notes? Why are you taking notes?" "If I'm going to be here, might as well learn the patterns. Oh hey, looks like we have company." Through the shelter opening, they could see several other cadets stumbling toward their camp. A crystalline geode, 2 more Vexorians, and a slug-like creature whose name Marcus couldn't pronounce all looked like they'd been through hell. Because they had. Is that smoke from a campfire?" one of the Vexorians croaked. Marcus stepped out. "Yep, you folks look rough. Got any dietary restrictions? I'm grilling." 20 minutes later, 6 bedraggled cadets sat around Marcus's fire, eating grilled fruit and what Marcus called mystery meat surprise, and generally questioning everything they thought they knew about survival training. "You've been here 3 days, the geode said, its crystalline structure refracting the firelight. 3 days, and you have a resort. Wouldn't call it a resort. More like a rustic camping setup, although I am thinking about adding a fishing spot. Saw some promising water down by the ravine." "The ravine with the Class 5 aquatic predators? Those guys? Nah, they're all territorial. You just have to know which spots they avoid." Pip had stopped questioning things and had instead taken on the role of camp assistant, helping distribute food and showing the newcomers where they could sleep. He'd gone from terrified to cautiously confident in the span of 72 hours. That's when the boss monster arrived. It was the kind of creature that the simulation designers had clearly spent a lot of time on. Massive, armored, with more spikes than seemed structurally necessary and a roar that could shatter glass. It emerged from the jungle like a living natural disaster, drawn by the concentration of life signs. The other cadets immediately went for their extraction beacons. Marcus stood up, grabbed the leftover grilled meat, and walked toward the creature. "Hey there, big guy. You hungry?" "Webb, what are you doing?" Pip shrieked. The monster paused, confused by this tiny creature approaching without fear. Marcus tossed the meat. The monster caught it, ate it, and tilted its head like a confused puppy. A very large, very dangerous puppy. Marcus tossed another piece. The monster sat down. "Good boy. Yes, you are. Yes, you are." By the end of the day, the boss monster, whom Marcus had named Steve, was lying by the fire like an oversized guard dog, occasionally accepting food offerings and apparently content with his new role as camp security. In the monitoring room, Vralketh stared at the screen in silence. Unit 7 ventured cautiously. "Sir, should we increase the difficulty, maximum levels, everything we have?" "Sir, that's against protocol. We could actually kill." "Do it." By day 7, the monitoring room had become a spectator sport. Instructors from other departments had started showing up during their breaks, crowding around the screens, showing Marcus Webb's impossible camping adventure. "Is that a fishing dock?" Professor Krelnax demanded, her tentacles waving in agitation. It was indeed a fishing dock. Marcus had spent the previous day constructing it from salvaged materials, complete with a shaded sitting area, and what appeared to be a cooler, made from insulated simulation materials, and packed with ice-equivalent substances he'd found in a cave. "He's been here a week," Vralketh said through clenched mandibles. "A week. The previous record was 2 days. And he's thriving," Unit 7 added helpfully. "Current camp population, 14 cadets. Survival rate, 100%. Morale, described as surprisingly good." On screen, Marcus was teaching a group of cadets how to properly gut a fish, while Pip lectured on edible plants. Steve the monster lounged nearby, having apparently accepted his role as camp guardian. The fishing spot had become a legitimate recreational area. "Increase difficulty again," Vralketh ordered. "Sir, we're already at maximum." "Then break the maximum." What followed could only be described as the simulation having a complete breakdown. A volcanic eruption to the east, a meteor shower to the west, a plague of venomous insects from the south, and for good measure, a Category 5 hurricane from the north. Marcus looked up at the chaos approaching from all directions, checked his notebook, and nodded. "Right. Okay, folks, we're going to need to reinforce the shelter. Pip, get everyone to the emergency bunker I dug last Tuesday. Steve, buddy, you might want to take cover. This is going to get weird." "You dug a bunker?" a Vexorian cadet asked. "When?" "During the downtime on day 4. Seemed like a good idea. Also, I've been through a Montana winter. You learn to prepare for everything." The bunker was, of course, perfectly constructed, ventilated, insulated, stocked with supplies, and featuring multiple escape routes. Marcus had apparently been preparing for this exact scenario. As the chaos raged above, the cadets huddled in the bunker while Marcus calmly grilled more food over a contained fire pit. "This is fine," he said. "Happens all the time in Colorado. Well, not the meteor shower, but the general vibe is similar." "How are you so calm?" the geode asked. "Oh, I'm not calm. I'm mildly concerned. But panic doesn't help and I'm hungry. So priorities." The volcanic eruption's lava flow came within meters of the camp before Marcus's pre-dug drainage channels redirected it away. The hurricane winds battered the reinforced shelter but couldn't bring it down. The venomous insects discovered that Steve was not a fan of bugs and got summarily eaten. The meteor shower was admittedly trickier, but Marcus had positioned the camp in a natural defensive formation where the rock overhangs provided cover. By the time the chaos subsided 12 hours later, not only had every cadet survived, but Marcus had actually managed to use the volcanic heat to fire some clay pottery he'd been working on. "It's not great," he admitted, examining a wonky bowl, "but it'll hold water, and that's what counts." The simulation's AI, which was supposed to be a neutral environmental generator, seemed to be experiencing something like frustration. It threw everything it had at the camp, and Marcus just kept adapting. When it spawned poisonous gas, Marcus was already wearing a mask he'd made from filtered materials. When it created quicksand, Marcus had already mapped the safe routes. When it sent a swarm of flying predators, Steve enthusiastically defended his territory. By day 10, Marcus was running what could only be described as survival workshops. "Okay, so the key to finding clean water is looking for these specific plant indicators," he explained to a rapt audience of alien cadets. "And you always boil it. I don't care if it looks clean. I don't care if it tastes clean. Boil it or regret it." A Zentari raised her hand. "But humans can drink almost anything. Your biology is notoriously resilient." "Yeah, and I still boil my water. That's how you stay resilient. Trust me, you don't want to learn this lesson the hard way." Pip had become his unofficial assistant instructor, demonstrating proper shelter-building techniques and explaining Marcus's various systems to newcomers. The camp now had designated areas for sleeping, cooking, food storage, water collection, and recreation. There was a schedule. There were rules. It was less a survival situation and more a functional community. In the monitoring room, the faculty had given up trying to make sense of it. "He's created a civilization," Professor Krelnax observed. "In a simulation designed to break military cadets, the human has created a functioning civilization." Vralketh stood suddenly. "That's it, I'm going in." "Sir, that's highly irregular." "So is this." He gestured wildly at the screens. "I'm ending this personally." Day 14 marked a milestone in Galactic Military Academy history. Not only had Marcus Webb survived 2 weeks in the Nightmare Protocol, but the simulation had essentially become a functioning campground. There was now a welcome sign made from carved wood, designated parking areas for arriving cadets, and a schedule board listing daily activities. The schedule currently read: morning fishing, afternoon, shelter maintenance, evening, storytelling by the fire. This was what greeted Instructor Vralketh when he materialized into the simulation, all 4 arms crossed and mandibles clicking furiously. Marcus looked up from where he was teaching 3 cadets the proper technique for smoking fish. "Oh, hey, Instructor. Welcome to Camp Persistence. We've got grilled fish if you're hungry." "Cadet Webb, explain yourself." "Well, I'm using indirect heat to slowly smoke these fish, which preserves them and adds flavor. The wood choice is important because—" "Not the fish, this!" Vralketh gestured around at the camp. This resort you've built in my impossible survival simulation." Marcus stood up, wiping his hands on a cloth. "I mean, I wouldn't call it a resort, more like a well-organized campsite. Though Pip did suggest we add a spa area, which I thought was a bit much." "It was a joke," Pip called from across the camp. "I was joking, mostly." Vralketh stalked forward, his exoskeleton practically vibrating with frustration. "Do you understand what you've done? The Nightmare Protocol is designed to push cadets to their absolute limits, to test their ability to survive in impossible conditions, to forge them in the crucible of desperation and fear." "Right, yeah, I read the manual. The one titled, 'So You're About to Die.' Solid humor, by the way." Marcus grabbed a stick and poked the fire. "Want a seat? You look stressed." "I am not stressed. I am—" Vralketh paused. "Actually, I am extremely stressed. Because of you. You were supposed to fail. They all fail. That's the point." "But why, though?" Marcus pulled out a log he'd specifically placed for seating and patted it. "Come on, have a seat. Talk it out." Against his better judgment, Vralketh sat. Marcus handed him a grilled fish on a stick. "See, here's the thing," Marcus continued, sitting across from him. "Your simulation isn't actually that hard. It's just different." "Not that hard? I've thrown volcanic eruptions, acid rain, meteor showers, and Class 5 predators at you." "Yeah, and that was rough, don't get me wrong. But it's not harder than, say, camping in the Australian outback, or hiking in Montana during winter. or honestly just living in Florida during hurricane season. Vralketh took a bite of the fish without thinking, then paused because it was actually really good. What are you saying? Marcus leaned back. Earth is a death world, Instructor. We just don't think about it that way because it's home. We've got predators that can kill us in dozens of different ways. Weather patterns that regularly destroy entire cities. Terrain that ranges from inhospitable to actively trying to kill you. And we vacation in these places. That's insane. That's humanity. We evolved on a planet that constantly tried to murder us, so we got really, really good at not dying. Your simulation? It's pretty mild compared to a camping trip in Yellowstone. At least here, Steve doesn't mind being petted. As if on cue, Steve the monster wandered over and flopped down next to Marcus, who scratched behind what might have been ears. Vralketh stared. You befriended the apex predator. I fed him. Works with most creatures. Back home, we've got these things called bears. Literal murder machines. Weigh up to 800 pounds, can run faster than you, climb trees, and have claws that can take your head off. And you know what humans do? We put locks on our garbage cans and call it a day. More instructors began materializing into the simulation, drawn by reports of Vralketh's meltdown. Professor Krelnax appeared first, followed by Unit 7 and several others. Is that a campfire? Professor Krelnax asked. And fish, Unit 7 added. May I try some? Before long, half the Academy's faculty was sitting around Marcus's campfire while he served grilled fish and explained Earth survival facts that made them progressively more horrified. Wait, a crystalline professor said. You have spiders the size of dinner plates? Only in Australia. But we also have smaller spiders that can kill you with one bite pretty much everywhere else. And you just live with this? We put them outside with a cup and paper. It's fine. Vralketh put his head in his hands, all four hands. My impossible simulation. My pride and joy. Defeated by a human who thinks it's a camping trip. To be fair, Marcus said, it's a really nice camping trip. The weather's been mostly cooperative, the fish are plentiful, and Steve here is way friendlier than most bears. You did good work on this, just maybe not in the way you intended. This was supposed to break you. Yeah, but here's the thing about humans, Instructor. We're really hard to break, not because we're tough, though we are, but because we're adaptable. You throw a problem at us, we solve it. You throw a bigger problem, we solve that too. It's kind of our whole deal. A Vexorian cadet who'd been listening approached cautiously. Cadet Webb, may I ask a question? Sure, shoot. What is the most dangerous thing you've encountered on Earth? Marcus thought for a moment. Honestly, other humans. We're terrifying when properly motivated, but a close second is probably customer service during the holidays. Now that's a survival situation. The faculty members looked at each other in confusion, but the human cadets in attendance shuddered. See? Marcus continued. You could make your simulation harder, but not with bigger predators or worse weather. You want to really test someone's survival skills? Add other people with conflicting goals. Add bureaucracy, add a shortage of resources, and then make them negotiate for it. That's psychological warfare, Vralketh said quietly. Yep, welcome to Earth. We practice it every day and call it going to the DMV. The campfire gathering continued well into the night, with Marcus telling increasingly absurd Earth survival stories that the alien faculty couldn't tell were exaggerated or not, because they weren't. Day 30 arrived not with a bang, but with a breakfast of grilled fish, foraged fruit, and what Marcus had started calling probably safe mushrooms. The simulation's official timer hit 0, not because anyone had failed, but because the semester was literally over. Marcus stood in the center of his thriving camp, looked around at the 14 cadets who'd made this place home, and nodded with satisfaction. Well, folks, it's been real. I cannot believe we survived, Pip said, his ears finally standing upright. I came into this simulation expecting to die within hours. Instead, I learned wilderness survival, basic construction, and 18 different ways to cook fish. You're a natural, buddy, proud of you. The extraction notification appeared in everyone's vision. Time to go. The cadets gathered their few belongings, though most of what they'd accumulated would stay behind in the simulation. Steve the monster, somehow sensing something was changing, let out a mournful sound. "I know, big guy." Marcus scratched behind Steve's head one last time. "You take care of this place, okay? Keep it nice for the next group." They materialized back in the Academy's extraction bay, to a scene that could only be described as completely unprepared for this situation. The standard protocol was for medical teams to rush forward to stabilize traumatized cadets. Instead, they found a group of well-fed, relaxed individuals who looked like they'd just returned from vacation. "Medical emergency?" a medic asked hopefully, scanner at the ready. "Nah, we're good," Marcus said. "Though I could use a real shower. The simulation's water system worked great, but nothing beats proper plumbing." The assembled crowd parted as Vralketh approached. The instructor's mandibles were moving in a way that the translator struggled with before finally settling on grudging respect. "Cadet Webb," he began formally. "In 300 years of the Nightmare Protocol, no cadet has survived more than 48 hours. You survived 30 days. Technically, we all survived 30 days. Team effort." Marcus gestured to the other cadets. "You did not just survive. You thrived. You built infrastructure. You created a functioning community. You befriended the apex predator. Steve's a good boy. You have forced us to completely reevaluate our understanding of survival training." Vralketh pulled up a holographic display. "The Academy Board has voted. You have set a new record for the Nightmare Protocol. Furthermore, your methods will be studied and incorporated into our curriculum." "Cool. Does this mean I pass?" "Pass? Cadet Webb, you achieved a perfect score. In fact, you achieved beyond perfect. We had to create new categories." Professor Krellnax floated forward, her tentacles waving excitedly. "The data from your survival strategies is invaluable. Your approach to resource management, community building, and threat assessment represents an entirely new paradigm. I just did what made sense." "Yes, and that is precisely what makes it so remarkable. You approached an impossible scenario with pragmatism and adaptation." She paused. "Although I must ask, the simulation logs show that at the end, you requested an extension." Marcus shrugged. "I mean, yeah. I'd just gotten the fishing dock to a good place, and I wanted to try expanding the garden. Plus, Steve and I were bonding. Seemed a shame to cut it short." Stunned silence. "You wanted," Vralketh said slowly, "to stay longer, in the Nightmare Protocol." "Well, when you put it that way, it sounds weird. But yeah, I was having a good time. Weather was nice, company was good, plenty to eat. What's not to like?" Unit 7's optical sensors brightened. "This is fascinating. The human genuinely found the experience enjoyable, relaxing even," Marcus agreed. "Way better than finals week." A junior instructor raised a hand nervously. "If I may, Cadet Webb, do you have any suggestions for improving the simulation? Making it more challenging?" Marcus thought for a moment. "Honestly, if you really want to test survival skills, add some customer service scenarios like you have to negotiate with a bureaucrat to get your supply drops, or resolve conflicts between other survivors who refuse to share resources. That's way harder than fighting monsters." The faculty members looked at each other in horror. "That's diabolical," Professor Krellnax whispered. "That's cruel and unusual," another instructor added. "We cannot subject cadets to such psychological torture," Vralketh said firmly. "There are conventions against such things." "Huh. Okay then. Maybe just make the fishing harder. I don't know, I think your simulation is pretty solid as is." The debriefing continued for another hour, with Marcus providing detailed notes on his survival strategies, resource management, and community building. The Academy officials took copious notes, occasionally stopping to process particularly absurd bits of information about Earth's hostile environment. Finally, as the session wound down, a small alien cadet approached Marcus nervously. "Cadet Webb, I am scheduled for the Nightmare Protocol next semester. Do you have any advice? Marcus smiled. Sure, kid. First, don't panic. Second, secure water before anything else. Third, treat problems as puzzles to solve, not threats to fear. And fourth, remember that survival isn't about being the toughest or the strongest, it's about being adaptable. And if I encounter a predator, make yourself big, make noise, and if that doesn't work, try the spray bottle. You'd be surprised how universal that is. As Marcus walked out of the debriefing room, Pip scurried up beside him. So what will you do with your newfound fame as the cadet who conquered the unconquerable? Probably take a nap, then get some real food, then maybe write home and tell them about Steve. My mom loves stories about me making friends with dangerous animals. Drives her crazy in the best way. Behind them, they could hear Vralketh addressing a group of instructors. We need to completely redesign the protocol. Perhaps set it on a human-class death world, somewhere truly hostile. Sir, Unit 7 ventured, wouldn't that be too difficult? For humans? Apparently not. For everyone else? That's the point. Marcus grinned. Mission accomplished. 2 months later, a new plaque appeared in the Academy's Hall of Records. Marcus Webb, Nightmare Protocol 30 days first cadet to request an extension. And in a darkened simulation chamber, ready for the next group of cadets, a certain apex predator named Steve lounged by the remains of a campfire. As if waiting for his favorite human to return, the simulation designers had tried to reset him. They'd tried to reprogram him. But Steve, it seemed, had learned something about loyalty from a species that specialized in befriending things that probably shouldn't be befriended. In the monitoring room, Unit 7 noticed the anomaly and flagged it for review. Vralketh looked at the screen, watched Steve settle into what had clearly become his favorite sleeping spot, and made a decision that would have seemed impossible 2 months ago. Leave him, the instructor said. Consider him a permanent feature. A reminder. A reminder of what, sir? That survival isn't always about fighting the environment. Sometimes it's about understanding it, something the humans figured out a long time ago. He turned away from the screen, all 4 arms gesturing in what might have been respect. Also, document everything Webb did, every technique, every strategy, every bizarre Earth reference. We're creating a new course. What shall we call it, sir? Vralketh's mandibles clicked in what the translator finally recognized as amusement. Human survival paradoxes. Why they should be dead, but aren't. The course became the most popular elective in Academy history, and somewhere on Earth, completely unaware of his growing legend in the wider galaxy, Marcus Webb was telling his family about his semester abroad, carefully editing out the parts about deadly predators and acid rain because his mother worried enough as it is. So yeah, did some camping, made some friends, caught some fish, pretty standard stuff. His younger sister looked up from her phone. Did you die even once? Nope, didn't even come close. Boring. You're supposed to have dramatic space adventures. Marcus grinned, thinking about Steve and the look on Vralketh's face when he'd set up the fishing dock. Yeah, super boring. Nothing exciting happened at all. His father, a retired park ranger who'd taught Marcus everything he knew about wilderness survival, caught his eye and smiled knowingly. Some stories were better left as inside jokes. Back at the academy, the next group of cadets prepared for the Nightmare Protocol. They'd all heard the legend of Marcus Webb, the human who'd turned hell into a camping trip. Most assumed it was exaggerated. They were about to learn that when it came to humans and survival, exaggeration was rarely necessary. The simulation began. Cadets scattered in panic. Predators roared. Weather patterns shifted ominously. And in the clearing where Marcus had built his camp, Steve raised his massive head, sniffed the air, and waited to see if any of these new arrivals had learned anything from the human who'd taught him that not everything small was food. Some of them had. They approached cautiously, offering food and respect instead of fear and weapons. Steve, having acquired a taste for civilized behavior and grilled fish, decided to give them a chance. The Nightmare Protocol would never be the same. And in the faculty lounge, Vralketh poured himself a drink and pulled up the live feeds, ready for another semester of humans doing impossible things and making it look easy. To Marcus Webb, he said quietly, raising his glass. The cadet who taught us that sometimes the scariest thing in the galaxy isn't the environment or the predators or the impossible odds. It's the species that looked at all of that on their own planet and decided to call it going outside. Unit 7 clinked its glass against his. To humans, may we never fully understand them. I'll drink to that. On screen, a new cadet was attempting to build a shelter using Marcus's documented techniques. It was wobbly and inefficient, but it was standing. Steve watched with what might have been approval. Progress. Somewhere in the vast expanse of the galaxy, humanity continued to do what it did best: survive adaptee, and occasionally befriend things that really should eat them but decided not to because the humans seemed friendly and also brought snacks. The universe, as it turned out, wasn't ready for humanity. But it was learning. One camping trip at a time,